Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conf42, and don't forget the humans.
So last year, I was in Spain at a technology conference, enjoying this beautiful beach from friends from the conference. This was an actual story, by the way. And one of my friends saw the ocean and said, I really want to go out for the swim. It's beautiful. I want to decompress. Would you mind keeping an eye on me? Of course, I said yes. I was going to take a look every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that I see them. They were just afraid of getting eaten by a shark mostly. I take a look, I see them, continue with my day. There's a lot going on at the beach. There's beach balls, there's frisbees, there's margaritas, there's popsicles. A lot of fun time was being had. Next thing I do is that I look and I no longer see the bobbing head that I was taking care of.
Wait, Anna, you literally forgot an actual human?
I did. I forgot a human. I forgot a friend.
Well, on that note, why don't we tell you who we are so you don't forget us? I'm Julie Gunderson, Senior Developer Advocate at AWS. You can find me on socials at Julie_Gund.
And my name is Margarita Medina. I'm a staff developer advocate at Lightstep. You can also find me on all socials on Anna and Medina.
Thank you for that, Anna. So let's kick off with talking about reliability. The AWS well-architected framework, it defines reliability as the ability of a workload to perform its intended function correctly and consistently when it's expected to. And look, the increased reliance on technology in various industries and in everyday life, and by just regular people and the expectations of people, has really increased this push for reliability in our systems because technology plays a larger role in critical infrastructure and healthcare and finance, transportation, and all other areas. And so we have to have a need for reliable systems.
And it's not just this extra need of reliable systems, it's also understanding that these dead stars that we see up on here, maybe you've seen them before, is that they continue to get more complex. And the interconnectedness and complexity of these systems means that one failure is very likely to actually cause a lot more cascading effects and cause more failures, more downtime, which highlights the need for us to really focus on reliable systems. It is known that in any complex system that failure is going to happen, but reliability requires us that we make sure that we become aware of these issues and that we avoid the customer impact, that availability of our infrastructure. And if our systems can actually bring themselves back up automatically, we want to work towards that. And if we're not there, let's start doing the work to make sure that we get there.
And to add just a little bit more stress to those death balls that you just saw on how complex our systems are, the reliability of our systems, it's important for a variety of reasons. I mean, you can look at safety. Technical systems are critical for the safety and well-being of individuals and communities. I mean, for example, you can look at power grids or transportation systems, medical equipment, airplanes. All of these play a crucial role in ensuring that people are safe and healthy. And if these systems aren't reliable, the consequences can be severe. This is potential loss of life and injury, not just Julie not being able to watch The Witcher on Netflix, which, by the way, is very good, but we won't get into that right now. There's also the economic impact. If we look at how our systems are critical for the functioning of many industries and businesses, I mean, you can look, system outages make major news now and they cause significant economic loss. Look at the stock market after a company experiences a major outage. And then we also have quality of life. And that kind of goes a little bit back to The Witcher, but really, technical systems do play a critical role in determining the overall quality of life. Look back at the last 3 years and how our lives were able to really continue on in a sustainable way due to some of these technical systems. And we also have environmental protection in the systems that rely on these, such as waste management or water treatment. I mean, The reliability of these systems is crucial to minimizing impact. And then you also have reputation. Look, anybody can go to the socials and say all the things, and this happens when we have incidents that impact our sites. So it's a lot of pressure, and I know that. So let's talk about ways to kind of reduce some of this pressure. So first, I want to start just by talking about some of the principles of system reliability. And this is what we look at from the AWS well-architected framework perspective. So first, we want to automatically recover from failure. And so we do this by monitoring a workload for key performance indicators, or KPIs. And those KPIs, they should be a measurement of business value, not the technical aspects of the operation of the service. And by doing this, you can trigger automation when a threshold is breached, which allows for automatic notification and tracking of failures, and automated recovery processes that work around or repair that failure. And with more sophisticated automation, it's possible to anticipate and remediate failures before they occur. And then you can also test recovery procedures. So testing is often conducted to prove that the workload works in a particular scenario. In the cloud, you can test how your workload fails, and you can validate your recovery procedures. You can use automation to simulate different failures or to recreate scenarios that led to failures before. And this is something that Anna and I are actually both very passionate about. We have actually for years worked on teaching people about chaos engineering, which is actually intentionally injecting failure into your systems to identify weaknesses and remediate them before your customers do. This approach, it exposes failure pathways that you can test and fix before a real failure scenario occurs, thus reducing risk. You also want to scale to increase aggregate workload availability. You replace one large resource with multiple small resources to reduce the impact of a single failure on the overall workload. Distribute requests across multiple smaller resources to ensure that they don't share a common point of failure, or one person monitoring that individual in the ocean to make sure that they're still there. Now, a common cause of failure in workloads is resource saturation, and you can monitor demand and workload utilization and automate the addition or removal of resources to maintain the optimal level to satisfy demand without over or under provisioning. And then finally, manage change through automation. Changes to your infrastructure should be made using automation. The changes that need to be managed include changes to the automation, which then can be tracked and reviewed.
Thanks, Julie, for talking about the principles of reliability. I do really think that the AWS well-architected framework gives us a good overview of what we need to aspire for in order to be reliable. I love all of them, and I do think that the capacity one is funny, especially when we think about if we had more people taking a look at this person that is out swimming in the ocean, maybe we wouldn't have lose them. But we are talking about humans today. And I want to make sure that we also remember that humans are very complex. There's multiple things that are built into us. And these multiple systems that we have, they each themselves have their own complexities. We could go on and on talking about all of them, but we can narrow it down to your circulatory system, your respiratory system, your muscular, your digestive, your nervous. There are so many of them that, one, they have to be interconnected in order for you to function as a human. But there's other parts that when you start having issues with one, you might start seeing the cascading failure happen in another part of the system. And when something actually goes wrong, you start wondering, what part of my human system is actually having these issues? And that's when we go and we look at doctors and ask them, hey, can you help me figure out what's going on?
Yeah, thanks for that, Anna, because the whole point as to why we wanted to give this talk anyway was to understand that our human systems are very similar to our technical systems, and we can apply some of the learnings from our technical systems to our human systems. Werner Vogels, he said, failures are a given and everything will eventually fail over time. Now, how we handle those failures can make a huge impact, not only on the mean time to restoration of our services, not only on the bottom line of our organization, but also on the impact to our humans. So let's talk a little bit about incident response. First of all, we talk about an incident. What we mean by that is an incident is an unplanned disruption of service. So when we look at it, incident response is the organized approach to handling those incidents. And just to kind of take a step back and look at how incident response came around, it's not something that us techies invented. It's actually heavily based on the Incident Command System, or ICS for short. And the Incident Command System was actually developed after devastating wildfires in Southern California in the 1970s. What happened is thousands of firefighters responded to these devastating wildfires, but they found it difficult to work together. They actually knew how to fight fires individually or fight smaller fires as a small group, but they actually lacked a common framework to work as a larger group. So when we talk about what incident response looks like in our technical systems, as I mentioned, an incident is an unplanned disruption of service, but even though it's unplanned, we still prepare for incidents. And incident response has multiple phases. So there is the preparation, that's the practice piece. That's something that Anna and I would talk about when we talk about chaos engineering, because it's actually a great way to practice your incident response. The best teams out there, they practice. So first, we've got to detect an incident, right? Our systems generally do this for us. We're hoping that our customers are not telling us via email or Twitter. We have monitoring in place to understand if something is going awry. Once we've detected that problem, then we want to assess it. We want to understand, what is the severity of this? Is this something that I can wait until the morning to deal with? Or is this a Sev 1 where we've got to jump on the phone at 2:30 in the morning? And we alert the right people. So we mobilize folks so that they can all help and respond to this incident. And they work together to resolve the incident. And sometimes during that response process, you've got to call in other folks, because as Anna talked about with those death balls, there's a lot of dependencies, and you might need somebody from another team as you respond to the event. Eventually, you resolve the incident, and then you focus on recovery of systems. So let's bring all the systems back up to that nominal state, or that steady state. And then it's really important to take a step back and learn from that. And we generally call that a postmortem, and we're going to talk more about that. Now, when we talk about incident response in humans, well, just like incidents, life happens. There are unexpected, unplanned disruptions. I think we've all been through some recently, So whether it's an illness or a family matter, burnout, or maybe your power went out and you couldn't give a talk at a conference that you needed to give, we can apply the principles of incident response to these situations. And it just starts with accepting that stuff's going to happen. And we can apply those principles in personal settings. So first, we prepare. Just like we would do with incidents. We develop a personal incident response plan, and that includes identifying potential incidents that could occur. And you can look back at incidents that have occurred in your life in the past. Is this something that's likely to occur again? Is it even a natural disaster? Do you know how you're going to get a hold of all your friends in case of a zombie apocalypse? Where are you going to meet them? A lot of people are coming to Idaho to meet me. But there could be personal health emergencies or financial crises. You want to develop protocols and procedures for responding to these. So once you've done that, now, can you detect an incident? Can you identify a personal incident as early as possible? And you can do this by monitoring yourself for signals. And you can look at those different signals, which Anna is going to talk about. And then you need to move to the assessment phase. So determine the severity of that incident and the potential impact on your life. If my power goes out and I can't give a talk at a conference in 2 hours, is that is that a Sev 1? Maybe for those 2 hours, but that incident will probably be short-lived versus maybe a major health crisis or something that's longer. Once you know the severity, you can mobilize the right people. So for example, I could call Anna and say, hey, can you help step in and give this talk for me, if it's a talk that she knew? And I could mobilize her. For other incidents, I might mobilize others. This might be family members, friends, medical professionals. Then you respond. So you're going to take the necessary steps to respond to that, which might be stepping away from work, going for a walk, calling the power company, whatever that incident requires. And then we move on to recovery. So restoring normal operations, as we talked about. Without moving on to that recovery phase, that truly recovering from that incident, oftentimes you can fall back into it. So it's important to take that recovery step and to take time to focus on it and make sure you fully recover so that you don't fall back into failure, as we would talk about with chaos engineering. And then take time to reflect. So conduct a postmortem on that incident. Take a time to look and see, how did this work? Did the right people get notified? All of those steps you can apply to personal incident response. Because when we look at the goal of incident response, it's to handle the situation in a way that limits damage and reduces recovery time and costs. And this is exactly what we want to apply to our personal lives as well. Because when we do this, it can reduce burnout, which, Anna, I think you're going to talk to us about.
Yeah, definitely. I think you kind of covered a lot in incident response. So folks might be like, whoa, never really considered that it could apply what I do on my job in my personal life. But let's take, for example, like what is a common incident that can happen to humans, that can happen in tech? That's burnout. Maybe you're still kind of like wondering, like, I hear about this, like, I hear that burnout in the technology space is on the rise, but what is burnout? Well, when we ask a psychologist by the name of Herbert Freudenberger, who is actually one of the first to be known to be talking about burnout, they wrote a book in 1980 around burnout. Their definition is that burnout is the state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by one's professional life. So imagine that, like, your work just took over your entire life and your brain can't work anymore and your body can't work anymore. That's what they define as burnout in this book. I personally believe that burnout does not only affect your professional life, unless your professional life is all the things that you love doing, such as engineering work, diversity work, parenting, and things like it. But I believe that burnout can also be very complex, and you can be burnt out by doing multiple things, such as doing a lot at work, having a social life, your personal life, keeping all those things. And at the same time, when you don't have certain aspects, so when you don't have a social life, but parenting and work takes up your entire time, you can still end up in a spot of burnout. I also like saying that I am not a professional, but I have burnt out of my job a few times, so I can speak with that expertise. Burnout is not depression, but it can definitely lead you there. So in my life, I use burnout as a signal of things getting rough, of I should really start talking to professionals. And I looked at a study around burnout by this company called Yerbo. They do surveys around how employees are doing in different spaces. And 2 in 5 tech workers are showing a high risk of burnout due to a lot of stress, being exhausted due to their hours, or just the lack of work-life balance. When we think of the world of DevOps, incident response, site reliability engineers, they have to be on the computer or getting paged at random times a lot more, that I'm sure if we were to just look at a DevOps study of burnout, those numbers actually might be way higher. And burnout is really hard to deal with. It's hard to identify that you're feeling burnt out. It's hard to bounce back from burnout. And some folks actually might leave technology, might leave their jobs. I know a lot of folks that got burnt out and are still burnt out. So you might be wondering, Anna, what the hell does burnout actually look like? Well, it looks very different to a lot of folks. It could be exhaustion where you're tired all the time. It could be that you're lacking motivation, lacking concentration, and it's hard for you to go out and see friends, see your family members, do your work, which can lead to maybe you not wanting to be around people that you know, people that care about you, and you alienate yourself, which then might mean that you start getting frustrated. For a lot of people, myself included, some of these symptoms, like some of these burnout thoughts, become physical symptoms and your body starts feeling them. You can also take the approach where your self-esteem actually drops to zero or just gets really, really low, and that could trigger a really bad depressive episode, or it can also lead you down the route of substance abuse. So, how is it that we can be more careful? How can we be more in tune with our systems to prevent these incidents from happening? Well, that is where the practice of observability comes in play. Observability in our technical systems is the practice of understanding our systems. This leverages telemetry data, techniques, and it allows for us to set up new practices based on the insights that we've uncovered. That telemetry data can be traces, can be logs, can be metrics, it can be events, just information that lets us be aware of how a technology system is doing. So, how does observability look like in humans? Well, after a human is deployed to production, out of the box, they actually have observability. Our bodies have senses to observe the world around us. Certain part of our systems have specific practices that help us with us being able to define what we feel and how we should act, such as our fight or flight response. But sometimes these things are biased due to our perception or biased due to the lack of personal insight. So that can mean that you might actually have an okay day, but you're still going through a panic attack. That perception makes you feel like you're in crisis, but in reality, you're not really in danger. So the question becomes, what are the traces, the logs, the metrics that humans have around us or that we can create, that we can draw these correlations from the events that we have in real time? We have to work on these insights, and everyone's going to work on them differently because those signals and insights are going to be different for what matters to you, what you want to work on, what complex system in your human system matters to you the most. It could be making sure that you have habits set out, making sure that you have your heart rate monitor always on, or that you have a certain heart rate throughout the workday, that you're exercising every single day, and that you're doing 10 miles of exercise on the weekends. It could also mean monitoring your mood intensity or making sure you're taking your medication, your blood levels. We are at a point that we can actually continue to increase our insights on our human system. We have technology such as wearables that allow for us to understand what's going on, such as the Apple Watch, Fitbits, the Oura Rings. They track our heart rate, our sleeping patterns. They can also track things like glucose, and there's a whole bunch of other like biology field with hardware that is fun to geek out in. But as you can tell, we are responding to things going wrong. There is nothing that is that preventative about this. So my other question becomes, how can we enable logging for our human system via food tracking, mood tracking, habit, or connection tracking? Because we want to add as many signals and notes to our day-to-day to actually understand how every single change applies to your life. Like, did eating a donut at 11 p.m. make me extremely cranky this morning? Should I have not done that? Maybe. I wish I could know.
I mean, maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe it made you happy this morning.
That is a very fair point. So we are creating these insights, but where do we go from there? What do we do? Well, when it comes to our technical systems, we have capacity planning. Capacity planning is the practice of planning to set up your technical systems to be successful in the future. You want to make sure that you have enough infrastructure provision. You want to make sure that your AWS account has all the limits raised for your high traffic event. You also want to make sure that you have an on-call rotation for the services that are going to be used a lot, or you want to make sure that you've trained the folks on call to actually take the right actions when an incident does occur. And that's where you do things like chaos engineering and load testing. And hopefully you're doing them together, because that is what sets you up for success.
Agreed.
And when it comes to humans, you got to do capacity planning too. Humans have a maximum capacity. This can be in the form of physical, emotional, financial, awareness, educational. People have to be in tune with their limit. How can you do that? Well, you ask yourself some questions. What do you value? Do you even know what your values are? Maybe think about doing some values exercises to make sure that your day-to-day actions are aligned with the version of you that you want to be. You also might want to ask yourselves, how many spoons do I have? How much bandwidth do I have? How much energy do I have to either handle a coworker currently giving me all this PR feedback in all caps that I'm not really happy with, or my toddler throwing their gerber in my face? How much am I able to handle? You want to be in tune with yourself. And with that comes that question, like, check in with yourself. Have I prioritized myself? Because you can't be there for others. You can't be there in situations if you haven't taken care of your own needs. Kind of like what they tell us in planes. Make sure to put on your oxygen mask first before you go and you help someone. So, how do you apply it? Well, maybe remember that you're not a computer. You are a human. Maybe that means that you have to turn off the news. You have to turn off technology. You have to request time off and go on vacation. You have to see your loved ones. Or maybe you have to make sure that you have a big group of subject matter experts in your life and that you're spending time with them.
You know, other things that you can really do is focus on a blameless culture. So when we talk about focusing on a blameless culture, with everything that Anna just told us too, I want to thank her for that time that you took, and point out that when we talk about Anna losing somebody in the ocean, we're not necessarily blaming her for that, although it sounds like it's. Sorry, Anna. In complex systems of software development, there are a variety of conditions that interact that lead to failure, right? So as Anna was talking about the ocean, there were frisbees and margaritas and sunscreen and people, a variety of conditions. So we want to perform a postmortem at the end of an incident. Some folks may call that a retrospective, an RCA, whatever it is that your team calls it. The goal is to understand what were those systematic factors that led to the incident and identify actions that can prevent this kind of failure from reoccurring in the future. The thing with a blameless postmortem is it stays focused on how a mistake was made instead of who made the mistake, how it was made instead of why it was made. This is a crucial mindset, and it's really important to understand. We want to leverage that mindset. A lot of leading organizations do. We have the benefit of hindsight when we're in a postmortem. We want to be careful not to have that turn into a bias. We want to ask how questions and what questions instead of why questions. Why, Anna, did you lose track of that person? Why? Instead of that, oh, how, Anna, what was going on at the time? What led you to make those decisions? Boy, I really feel bad for picking on you in this, Anna. Just for everybody to know, Anna and I have known each other for years. So
Hello. It's called a single point of failure. That's what went wrong to begin with.
And actually, probably shouldn't have been a single point of failure. There should have been other people that were asked to keep an eye on this person. But let's talk about a blameless culture in humans. Look, humans are humans. They are going to fail. We will fail. It is unavoidable. So practice blamelessness to yourself. When we talk about that blameless culture and not having that hindsight bias when we look at a postmortem, that also happens in our lives. I can tell you, I've been guilty for laying in bed and going over my day with, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Be kind to yourself. Practice blamelessness. Use how and what questions Give yourself a break and realize that you're not alone as well. Other people feel stress and struggles. Folks just might not talk about it, and it's okay to give yourself a break. It's very rare that one of our actions is going to cause the next zombie apocalypse. So remember that and try to keep things in context. And this is really important because we want to move in our technical systems from that reactive approach where we're just all scrambling because the phone rang to a more proactive approach where we are calm, we understand our systems, and ideally, we're preventing situations from occurring. We look at that with disaster, unexpected problems that result in slowdowns and interruptions or network outages. We can prepare for these by practicing, by working with our teams, getting to understand our systems better, and preparing. And then we can move that to the humans. Anna, talk to us about that.
I love talking about humans because we do have to move from always being reactive and heading into the emergency room because something went wrong, or having a meltdown and having to call a friend because things are not working out. Fair point. There's nothing wrong with calling your friends when you're having a meltdown. Number one, that's what you should be doing. They're your friends to begin with. But what are some things that we could be doing today that allow for us to live a life worth living? Live a life with your loved one, live a life that you're happy with. And that brings me to staying connected to people around you. Human connection is so crucial. Like, I'm sure all of us in this pandemic world that we're still in feel it. It's not the same to be with your loved ones on virtual settings like this versus actually spending in-person time with you. And it also depends on your human love language. Are you someone that is happier when you're actually spending physical time with someone in the same room? Or do you need something like acts of service that someone helps you do activities with you? We all want to feel connected. And the same way that we want to continue moving from reactive to proactive, another way to do it is to set up some goals, set up some North Stars of where you want your life to be. We're at the beginning of the year. It's the perfect time to think about New Year's resolutions or think about where you want to be at the beginning of next year. What is it that you're doing today that allows for you to know that you're working towards them? And the same way that in incidents, we are preparing people around us as subject matter experts, we could use the same concept of subject matter experts in our personal life and set up a board of directors, which includes things like your past managers, your peers, leaders that you look up to, just folks that you can ask, hey, is this the right move for my career? How do I deal with the coworker that's doing WXC? And lastly, another way that we can continue to be proactive is to plan for the future. In psychology and therapy, there's a specific type of therapy called future-directed therapy that is really cool. It's all focused on making humans think about the future and be content with the future. And it does it by doing prospection, the action of looking forward into the future. And that is where you put that North Star and you work towards it. That's where you put that reliability goal and you work towards it. And of course, I can't do a talk about tech and humans and not throw some YAML at y'all. Don't forget to kubectl apply -f humans.yaml, and don't forget to set some resource limits and make sure that you have everything set up properly. So some self-care tips to leave you all with. Make sure to check in with yourself often, whatever often means for you, whether it's weekly or monthly. I recommend at least quarterly to take out the burnout survey that you can find on burnoutindex.yerbo.co. Check in on your teammates and loved ones just to make sure that they're also hanging in there. I love treating myself, but you should also do something nice for yourself every once in a while. That might be getting a massage, getting your nails done, booking a vacation with your loved ones, eating a lot of ice cream, playing video games, you name it. Make sure to unplug. Turn off social media, turn off the internet, turn off the news, turn off technology. Be with yourself. What are you like when you don't have all this stimulation that we have with electronics? And as you work towards all this, be kind to yourself, but set some deadlines and start small as you work through these things. Remember, you can be flexible with yourself, but you can work towards having a reliable human system too.
And we want to make sure that you have some resources. So I'm going to pause here to let folks take a screenshot or check out some of these resources that we have for you. Don't forget, there's apps, there's open sourcing mental health, there's lifelines that might pertain to you and your friends and family members. Ultimately,
it's okay to ask for help.
And we're all humans.
Be kind.
Now that we've stated that we're all humans and that you should be kind, quick point to note is that not all images in this presentation were created by humans. So thank you, Dolly. Any image that had this little graphic on it was created by Dolly. And then to kind of finish up Anna's story, I was the person that she lost in the ocean. There were a couple of things that led to this. I had shared my location with Anna, but my phone was with Anna, not with me in the ocean. I did end up about a quarter of a mile away, and it was a fun walk back. Ultimately, I'm alive, did not get eaten by a shark, and still very much so appreciate my friend for making sure that I'm alive. So
she's never going to let me live it down that I forgot her at the ocean. So there is that.
I mean, there is, but we have learned from this, and other people will monitor me when I'm in the ocean, or maybe I'll pay attention to myself as well. So thank you for joining us. All right, we're great. Bye.